Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the show. So, I'm really excited to have Elshia back on the show with us again for a second time because we're going to go deep into the last bit of work we did together and all the amazing results she created. It was just such a powerful container, and her work is so powerful. And I'm really excited to talk to her about it. So, Elshia, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
Yeah, I'm really excited because just to kind of like it almost feels like a debrief for us too because we completed our container like a month or so ago, and it's cool to kind of like talk about what happened. And obviously we've talked about it, but to really like solidify it and just kind of illustrate the process for the listeners, because one of the things I was saying before we started recording is just how like good you got at the process, like the inner child healing process, and just like moving through stuff that came up for you. And yeah, it was just so powerful. So why don't we kind of start at the beginning, and if you can kind of tell us like where you were at when we first started, and like what you were feeling and what made you want to work privately to like get from A to B.
Okay. So I literally had just been quote unquote booted out of my counseling position that I took to get a years of like experience before I was going to really start launching a business. Time dragged on, a year and a half passed, and at the same exact time, you reached out to me and mentioned the mini morphosis, which I had done the full metamorphosis method. And it was just really good timing because I had been struggling to put myself out there because of a lot of self-doubt. So I was having a lot of anxiety about that. And this really supported me to tap back into the tools of the metamorphosis and all the support in that group, as well as yours. And I had some pretty profound shifts of clearing some things from the past that virtually removed my self-doubt and stopped like I was, the feelings of procrastination. And from there, the opportunity to work with you privately, which I had always saw myself doing at some point, but I kept feeling or believing I need to have the right amount of like income in place, whatever it was before. And I've learned more and more through my own healing that when you really kind of come from your heart and your soul, and these opportunities present themselves, and you feel like the expansion around it, you find a way to make it work. And that piece has not phased me since I made that decision. Like it's never been an issue of payment. But in the process, I got to work with you for 3 months, and I think I fully healed like so much. Like I virtually like don't really have much anxiety, or it really just doesn't last very long at all.
Yeah. Well, let's go into okay. So before we go into like the actual like private container, when you did the mini morphosis and then the metamorphosis like as for a second time, and when you came in, when you said like you had all this fear of fear of putting yourself out there and the procrastination stuff, like what do you feel like changed in that container to make you feel like ready to put yourself out there?
Yeah, I think just learning to feel safe. So I think I talked about it a little bit the first time we did this, did a podcast on my first recording with you, where I recalled like one relationship in my life where I felt safe, and all other like romantic connections have not felt that way. And so my sense of worthiness was tied up in not feeling like I deserved to feel that. And so I processed the ending of that where I didn't really process it at the time when it happened. It never occurred to me until it's just the timing of actually putting that feeling safe in the physical world with this is like a scary thing to do.
Yeah.
So I so that allowed me to move forward, and now it just became, I released like those emotions that were stirring up all this self-doubt and lack of worthiness inside of me through the things that you have taught me. And we talked about the inner child healing process. I mean, your brain doesn't know the difference between fantasy and reality. So when you can actually not bypass those original feelings where that started, that wounding started, and go back to that place, and through the breathing, that's where it was brought up for me. And I didn't know going into the breathing that that's what was going to come up when I was going through this period of anxiety that I was going through. And it basically, then I was able to kind of visualize after that experience, giving myself what I needed. And it really kind of affects sort of your chemistry. And I have now, it's just down to like logistics, like what is my to-do list, what are my next steps, and no sense of like urgency or fear around like all the shoulds, the ways that we judge ourselves about how we go about it.
Yeah. So do you feel like the procrastination was just literally because of the feeling unworthy and like would
Yes.
let yeah. And that is so much of it. Like I feel like people will think like, "Oh, I'm just like lazy or I don't know how to manage my time." Like I hear people ask questions all the time around like, "How do you manage your time?" or like, "I can't like how do you get yourself motivated?" And it's like if you're not motivated or you're procrastinating, like there's a deeper reason why you don't just like randomly procrastinate.
Yeah, it's true. And I would find, and then I would judge myself for procrastinating. Like I would do all of these things before I would actually sit down and get started. And then it would just like push my time back further and further in terms of time management. And then I would start to judge myself, and like self-loathing would enter about why I wasn't making things happen. So that is not really present anymore.
Yeah, that's so amazing, and I think that's, like, such a common thing that happens for so many people, and I think if people understood, like, the deeper thing of, like, why it was happening and address that, then, like, they wouldn't deal with it anymore, because that's really why it's happening. So, okay, so and I wanna talk about too, because I feel like our container was so, powerful because we also had such a clear intention around it where it was like, "Okay, the by the end of this, you're going to have clients paying you and sustaining you, right?" And like it was really like one of those things where it was like, this is where we're going, and like we're not stopping till we get there, right? And like we totally did. So, in the beginning, did you have any doubt or like what was going through your head?
Yeah, I was like, how am I gonna possibly make these like clients come in? Like I have always been used to relying on other people and putting myself in other people's spaces to, and now how am I just like out of the blue going to find these people? But because I was no longer afraid to put myself out there, people have found me, or conversations just like happened. And even if it wasn't like a full on completion, it's just the markings that like this is working. Like it's not, I don't need to question it anymore, and I'm being like supported every step of the way, and I'm able to see that rather than always paying attention, being in like that ego state of like the fear that protects you, but also it's like very limiting if you haven't like healed where that originally comes from, because we can have fear, but we don't need to make decisions out of fear.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it's like and it's the same thing with like the childhood wounding. It's like that's going to come up, but you don't want that to be the thing driving the bus, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about too like what were some of the big things that came up for you, because I feel like there was such a beautiful arc of like things coming up and then me kind of walking you through the inner child healing process, but then you getting so good at doing that on your own. But like, what were some of the things that came up in the beginning for you just around the whole process of really starting to bring in clients and grow your business when it comes to the breath work and the metamorphosis method and the trauma piece? So like, yeah, what were some of the big things that came up?
Yeah, well, just like this feeling that I've carried with myself for years of like, you're all on your own. Like, no one is there for you. And so if I would, like that starts with my family. So, and I'm living with them and, it's it's not like that isn't still, like, a wound that's there, but I'm able to find the support I need, like, I trust that it's going to come, and so I have, like, just me I feel like I'm in a whole different reality that I was, where I'm in this very, like, positive, but not, like, willfully, like, it's just more naturally, my perspective has shifted, and I'm forming all of these connections all the time. So that was just like a big part of it. Like, or if I would have a conversation with my mom about something I had a question about. I remember one time in particular, and I was like, the answer just like was like, "Ugh, this is like a reminder of that original wounding. And then all the anxiety would start in that like that old belief of like, I'm all alone, I don't have any help, or I'm different, like why me, kind of a little bit of victim stuff, this is different for me. But being in a container with you and with the other women in the mothership, like, I'm also understanding that I'm not the only one that feels this way, and we have each other to share about that and support each other, and it definitely makes you feel a lot less alone and on your own. So,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the group is like so powerful. You know, I think both are really powerful. I think private can be really powerful, especially when you're like have specific things that you want to really focus on and really like get from A to B. But also being in the group is so powerful because a lot of times people will share things that really resonate for you, but you might not have like thought about it, or you might not have even thought to share it, but then when someone else shares it, it's like really helpful for you, you know? So that's why I believe both. I think everybody should do both at some point, you know, because they both are really powerful. But I'm just like remembering certain things that I think like for you in the beginning, like when we started to do the process of like connecting with your inner child, like I know that that wasn't necessarily like it feels more abstract at first, right?
yeah,
And I think that this is something that I want to go into a little bit because we talked about this a lot, like where, and
yeah,
you've even seen it with your own clients, where like in the beginning, when you talk about addressing your inner child, it can feel so abstract. So, like for you, how did you take it from like that being this like abstract thing that it was hard to connect with to really getting good at addressing your inner child and going through the process and like shifting everything? Like, how did you make that connection?
yeah, that's a really good question because also as like a trained therapist, like clinically trained therapist, there's like conversation about inner child work, but I didn't ever really get it. And it really just literally came to me because in the mini morphosis, you shared your inner child process, right? And I have done all like the mother wound meditation, breath work, the father wound, the sibling, gone through all the core wounds in your metamorphosis method. And so you shared this as a very like succinct way to basically take all of those and distill it into this one process that can be practiced and you like every time this stuff comes up. And so I was just really struggling with a lot of anxiety, I remember. And I was just again feeling bad for myself, feeling sorry for myself, like what's wrong? How do I figure this out? How do I get through this? I don't understand. I just feel like nothing is gonna change for me. This isn't going to grow. This isn't going to work. I'm just alone. I've been trying to figure out this out for so long. And so I just you would communicate with me like, try this, just I think you need to do this. And then it was like more than once you would go back to this, go back to this. And so literally in the process of doing that and the breathing, the vision of me when I was 14 years old came, and being yelled at and like hyperventilating on the floor of my room, just like crying with my parents over me. And that's where that sense of unworthiness came from. Like, you're bad, you're bad, you're bad. And I worked through, like, I never processed that at the time. It was not a safe time to do that. And for years it was stuffed down. I remember how my life played out after that and why I had to do that. And so I let all of that out. And then I pictured myself as the adult, just kneeling down next to my little girl self and hugging her and telling her, "You're fine. Everything's going to be okay. There's nothing wrong. You're fine." And those emotions literally just like left me. I felt so much better. And I was done with that belief. And it was just and that's where it clicked for me. Okay, this is exactly what inner child is. And a lot of people, when I hear them talk about it, they'll say, like, I saw her sitting next to me in the car, or, like, if I've worked with clients, this memory will come up. Like, I remember when she wasn't able to, like, she wasn't told that her pet was going to be put asleep, and they'll go back to that memory. It's just like, you don't always know what is there to be processed until you go through connecting with your subconscious and it comes up for you, and it's like, oh wow, I needed to release that. And then you're able to like visualize how you would help her after that, give her what she needed. And so it was making the process real. Like, it was no longer abstract. I really felt and experienced it in that breath work that I.
Yeah, and I think that's why the breath work is so powerful for it too, because it kind of brings you into that moment in real time, because I think that a lot of where people kind of make the mistake, or inner child work in general, is just like talking to your inner child, but like that doesn't really do anything. Like, that's good to do after you like have that emotional release, but you have to like connect with that part of you who felt that way, and you have to feel the emotion. And like that is the part that I think a lot of people don't want to do. Like, you don't know how many conversations I've had this week with people where I'm like, you just need to feel your emotions. Like, and I don't think people really even know that they're not feeling their emotions either. Like, and I'll hear people tell me like really crazy stuff that happened to them, but they're like disconnected from it. You know what I mean? And
Yes.
it's like, I always joke, like, you can't skip over the emotion. Like, you have to feel the emotion. And I think that that's where a container is so powerful, because to do that on your own is like almost impossible.
Yeah.
Like, it's
Yeah,
not.
100%. I didn't,
Yeah.
and I see it all the time in people, and then in working with some men, I see it a lot in men, and it's so, like, obvious to me now, and because I've brought myself through that, like, that is the key part that everyone bypasses. And I don't think it's also, like you're saying, it's not always intentional. People just don't know. It's so uncomfortable to go into that place. People have this fear of, what am I gonna become? Who am I gonna be if I feel those feelings again that are trapped inside of me, that I didn't take the time to do because I didn't have an adult to hold space for me to do that. And that's all children need. They
Yeah.
just need someone to hold space for them so that they can pass, like, that emotion can wash through them and they can be done and move on, because you're not going to feel the same way forever, but you have to actually go through it. So, yeah.
Yeah. And we were never really taught how to do that either, like I always kind of give this analogy. I've been using this one. I always use analogies, but I've been using this one lately around, like, if you were like walking through like a desert or whatever, and you had no food and or water or something, and you had to get to the other side, but your like leg was broken, you would just like through pure adrenaline, you would keep going because you had to, because there was no place to stop and like fix your leg. And then when you got there, then your leg would start hurting really bad because like you would allow yourself for that to happen. And it's kind of the same thing with the emotions. Like when you're a kid, you don't have a safe place to feel them, so you don't feel them.
Mhm.
But then like when you get to be an adult and you have the capacity to do it and you are in a supportive space, then they come up because you're like you feel safe and you have the support. So it's kind of the same thing where it's like it wasn't your fault that you didn't feel it. It's just that you didn't have a safe container for that to happen.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. So
Powerful. And it's simple, but it's not easy, but it's simple. Once you experience it, like, you know how to continue to do that for yourself.
yeah. Yeah. So as you kind of like got better at that and moved through that, then like what were some of the things that started happening as far as like, like bringing new people in and just the development of everything that we intended kind of starting to magically unfold? Like what are some of the things that you remember about that?
Yeah, well, first of all, I have been supporting myself ever since I decided to go into this work like years ago through massage therapy. And I had had a lot of doubt around my abilities, even doing that for a long time, because both times I was learning these certifications, I was going through some trauma. And so I clearing again, like the self doubt and removing that sort of worthiness wound. I started bringing in more work because I just lost the lack of confidence. I now am fully confident in my abilities, and those started bringing in other connections of just like having organic conversations around this other side of what I do, just meeting people and people expressing interest and looking for something like this. And then, all the different ways that I've been putting myself out there, whether it's through social media or not, people have reached out to me and saying, I want to be your client. And I've been working with them and helping them along the way. And now, you have your guidance, like, has given me a lot of foundational pieces to tackle and all these other opportunities to create for myself, to put myself out there. And just like, it's just, I wouldn't have done this a year ago. I would have like shied away from these conversations, or even shied away from even initiating. Or if I did it, I would have come in with like a very different energy. And so people are interested, and it's just, there's lots of opportunity. It's just all about trusting and kind of like understanding where you're at in your own healing journey, and releasing a lot of that stuff, and then more and more things, you kind of start to evolve and stuff aligns with where you're going. And so little by little, it's like at this point I'm just like following the breadcrumbs, even though I've had like a lot of trust and evidence of working that way. It's just that you almost, the more you heal, the more you are challenged to level up. So then
Mhm.
new challenges come through that are really like, again, like putting yourself like to the test, like, you've done this before, Elshia. Now can you put it forward in this way? And it's all like walking in the dark sometimes, but it's and then it's you just like keep moving forward, because now I'm like not stuck anymore and staying in the same place.
Yeah, and I think that also you just kind of like knew. Like it's funny because I will, obviously I've worked with a lot of people, but like there's certain times where like I can just tell that somebody's like ready and they just like know. And I think like you got to this place where you just like knew. And I think that is kind of the difference. I'm always kind of looking at like what are the X factors with people who, you know, get really great results right away versus when it takes other people a lot longer. And I
Mm,
think that one of them for you was like, you just knew that like this is what you were supposed to do,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
also you knew, and then you had the confidence in what you were doing, right? And I think that the cool thing about our container too is like, since you had done the certification, I was able to really like support you in the work you were doing with clients too, and then you were seeing the results they were getting, and it was just like compounding, because it was like, oh my god, this is working, this is happening, like, and these people want to work with me, they want to continue, they're getting great results. And it was just like, it kind of compounded in the knowing and confidence that you already had. And I think that you kind of had that more like embodied knowing and confidence that is really important, because if you don't have that, then I think it can make it very, very challenging. And it's probably why, the first go around when you thought you wanted to start a business, but like we're having trouble, is like why you didn't. So like, what do you think is the reason why it all started working? Like, do you think it's the confidence piece?
Yes.
Like,
Absolutely. No, because I now know that if I am in front of people, I have the confidence that I know I can help them in the way, like, I no longer doubt that. And that
yeah.
that didn't exist before I started the container with you. So that was like a huge shift. I think it was like the number one, like, top element that I needed to just propel forward, and it was like the biggest change. And it's, yeah, I mean, so now that's why now it's just a matter of like putting the pieces together of creating these opportunities to put myself in front of people because the confidence is there. So,
Mhm.
yeah,
And when you
that's
do have stuff come up, like, because I talk about this a lot with people, where, like, for me, for example, just to like give people an understanding of like when you get better and better at the inner child healing process, like for me, like stuff that I would maybe be dealing with or feeling for like 2 days is now like 20 minutes or something. So, like, how did that go for you as far as like
yeah.
starting to move? Like, when you have something come up, what is like your process now, or how do you use the process, and how much quicker does it happen now?
Yeah, because I mean, there were times in the past where it could take a couple weeks before I figured out how to like pass through this and process it. And then it moved from like when I started the container in the beginning, it was like maybe like 24-hour period. And now little tiny moments will come up and I'll just kind of recognize where this is coming from. I'll have to really take time to sit with it. And where did this start? And I
Mhm.
just feel it. I feel those feelings. I remember what that feels like that I didn't let myself feel at the time that it happened. I go back to that young child, and sometimes it's just like 90 seconds. And it
Mhm.
doesn't happen as often anymore too, because I think when we're trying to figure out how to heal, um, it can be very much these highs and lows for a while. And
Mhm.
the more we practice this sort of like higher level stuff to work through, the more we get into a more consistent, like balanced place, right? And we're
Yeah.
just like, I'm more like in tune with what's going on in my body. And I actually had, I mean, I've definitely had certain triggers with clients. Like when I first started in that counseling position, I had a lot of lack of confidence. So like getting booted out of that context really forced me to now work on this and recognize where I was, even through that lens of that lack of confidence, I was still making an impact and helping my clients. And so now that I've like shed that, I I had one of my first like really serious sort of trigger moments with with a client recently, and
Mhm.
we've built up almost a year-long relationship at this point. So it was so powerful to be able to like recognize that what was happening in the moment and take responsibility for it. And then after that session, again, like sit with that. Where did this come from for you, Elshia? How do I need to continue to process it? And all of the feelings that started to come forward after, there's also, they're not always mine, right? And I'm
Mhm.
absorbing other people's, but I'm not I'm not avoiding it. I'm just letting it pass through me because I'm, again, confident that I'm not going to stay stuck there. Like, I know how to move through this, and then be able to like repair when that does happen. It's so powerful, and it just makes me believe I can handle this. Like, it's not going to take me down anymore.
Yeah, I think that's such a powerful place to be in because you kind of know that like whatever is going to get thrown at you, you know you'll be fine, even if it sucks for a minute or whatever.
Yes.
Like you'll be able to deal with it.
Yeah.
And how do you feel like your work with clients has evolved?
Well, the more, like, the deeper I continue to go and recognize this, and have this awareness, and I know how to like help myself, the deeper I can take my clients, the more I can really connect with where they're at. Like, that's a
Mhm.
big part of it. You can have a lot of skill in certain ways, but if you can't meet people where they're at, you can only be so effective. And also, before you might like step on somebody's toes or turn them
Mhm.
off. So I'm really, and I mean, I've really like calmed down my inner child so that it's like not interfering with how I'm relating to people. I'm really
Yeah.
much more able to really like listen and give them what they need, and not coming from a place of like my own ego. It's like whatever they need is working through me,
Yeah.
right? So that is really beautiful, and I know like they feel that because I can create, because I've created that safety within myself. I have the capacity to create that safety for my clients.
Yeah. No, and that's so true, and people can feel it because this is something I say all the time when we talk about like everyone talks about like trauma informed or whatever. And I'm like, truly trauma informed is like you have to be continuing to do your own trauma work. Like if you can only take people as far as you've gone yourself. And you're right, you have to be able to meet people with like at where they're at and like be able to hold space for where they're at without making it about you or without um feeling like you have to like set a boundary or make them take responsibility. And it's like when somebody's in a trauma response, like you just hold a safe space. Like you don't have to like hold them accountable or
Yes,
whatever the fuck people say, which I think is bullshit.
I know.
It's
I
like
know.
just hold space because they're in a trauma response, but you have to have gone there yourself to understand that, and to understand like where people are at because when someone feels safe and they feel held and supported in a container, like that's when they're going to create a shift, not by someone like telling them what to do or, pushing back at them. Like that's not
Yeah.
healing.
Yeah, it's so true. I've seen it happen. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I've seen it happen a lot, and, like, I think that's fine for, like, a different scenario, but, when it comes to really doing the deeper healing and transformation, like, people really just need, like, a safe container where someone is, like, holding a clear energy and not judging them or not making them wrong and just, like, letting them feel what they're feeling so they feel really held, and I think that to me is what really creates transformation for people.
It is, and it's not rocket science, but unless you've
It's
like experienced it, then it's hard to hold space for that and recognize what people need, which is like the same thing that you are able to give yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Um, so yeah, so okay, so let's kind of go through the trajectory a little bit. So like you started to move through the anxiety and like people started to come in and then you started to take on some like longer term clients too. And as far as like the business side too, I know you started to just develop more of like what it is that you do, and like getting really clear on that. And like, what was that process like? Or how do you feel differently now about like describing what you do or just like being able to articulate what you do? Cause that's just such a huge thing that everybody needs to do.
Yeah. Well, it's still evolving, but mainly like I have had, because of Like, I really just it's so interesting to see what has happened in my own life that I never would have expected I would be at the place that I am, and it's like, that's why it has become so obvious to me that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So, I just have mainly a passion for helping people move through, their darkest places. Um, because
No big deal.
yeah. I mean, I helping people kind of shift their perspective on what it is they're going through, as this is the medicine, this is the message that you're meant to receive, and this is going to help you basically kind of separate from everything that you were like programmed to believe as a child, or what society and expects you to do, or um and and really just kind of whatever the life circumstance is relevant, but it's not really, because everyone's kind of story is different. But how do you actually process that rather than avoid and run away from it, like maybe you've been doing for such a long time, and really like helping people feel like they can relax into the pain, which is really challenging. So when I look at it in terms of the work that I do combine, I mean, so much of it lives in the body. And because I've been working with the body for a while, and then the breath work to me has become just my favorite tool because it's free. And people, I just see there's all these really great tools out there right now. And those are just there to make it safe for people to not like re-traumatize themselves, to do what needs to be done to reprocess old wounds and leave them in the past. But the breath, when you can teach people this and really like guide them, it's not always something that you understand right away, and maybe people have had different encounters with breath work, but really like the more you just kind of understand this particular type of breathing, conscious connected breathing. And then you can start to use that on your own. Like, I don't want to create a codependent relationship with clients. I want to help them do what I've eventually be able to do for myself, so that then they can like remove all of this baggage that they've been carrying around and figure out what it is they're meant to be here for. And so I'm just seeing it kind of evolve from like, I've been working with the body, so I've learned a lot about connecting with people's bodies, into moving into doing like in one session breath work, body work, conversation around, and sort of like what's next for helping people find their purpose, different like tools of, just like things that I've learned along the way. And I just have all these ideas that I know are going to continue to like come forward as I move forward in this space. But right now I'm really kind of trying to meet people, focus on how can we heal your anxiety, and how I can like hold workshops, with a group of people. So I'm looking to move into like both individually and more groups, and see how that grows and evolves.
That's awesome. And the other thing now I'm remembering, we kind of touched on this towards the end, was you were noticing that a lot of your clients, as they moved through the dark stuff, right? As they moved through the anxiety and the deeper stuff, then it was like automatically we're kind of getting towards like, well, okay, then what is my purpose, or like, what am I meant to do in the world? And I know for me, that was like a natural progression that I started to notice for people pretty early on. But like, how did you start to realize that like the connection between those two things and how those things go together?
Yeah, I mean, because I experienced it with myself, like there were just like all these, there's this quote that says like things are happening for you, not to you. And so when bad things happen to you and it just feels like it's going to destroy you, um that getting like the support to move through that really helps force you into like what you're meant to do in a certain way. That was just what happened to me. Like I had to figure out, I was like just completely devastated with um a lot of PTSD from a relationship and then linking that to my childhood. And I had to find a way to figure this out because the alternative was not an option. Like,
Right.
you know, and but from there, it was just like life-changing going through that process and being on that journey that and I've been struggling to figure this out for such a long time that it was like, "Oh my gosh, this is what I wanna help other people to do." And then I'm seeing in clients where they just start to be free of what they've been doing and feeling like stuck and moving towards like, what am I interested in? What lights me up? And I'm able to kind of like what there are like certain moments in their childhood that they connect to that like are not traumatic, but where it kind of shows things that they are related to what their purpose and what they came here to do. And this like trauma that you're going through right now is really meant to wake you up and connect you back to your soul because that's really what's like talking here.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that like once you move through the trauma, it's almost like you're kind of like brushing away like what is like covering up what you kind of always knew about yourself. Cause I feel like once people kind of recognize what it is that they want to do, it's not like surprising. Like it's not like something that's like, oh my God, like my whole life. I mean, for most people, right? Maybe there's some people, but like for most people, it's not like, oh my God, my whole life I've been like a accountant and now I want to be like, a spiritual teacher. Like maybe a little bit, but like not there's always implications of it, right?
Yes.
And like whatever the person's currently doing, it's somehow related to the thing they're meant to do. It's just like not exactly,
Yeah.
So I think it's also something where like you're just when they do that deeper work, they're like giving themselves permission to honor the thing about themselves that they like always knew.
Yeah, I know. And that's like really exciting because but that can feel scary for people because again, we've been so used to like what our family or what society, what our culture tells us to do. So there's a lot of like waking up to how those things weren't working for people. So it's
Mhm.
like I help create that awareness within them and then the rest is they have the answers like they were already inside of them but they become more there's clarity that starts to form around that so it's like
Mhm.
exciting to help people see that.
Yeah, for sure. And it's really not about like telling anybody what to do or anything. It's just kind of like allowing them to see it on their own, which I think is like the most important part of this work because, I think sometimes people are wanting like someone else to tell them what to do or to like give them permission and like that's not really that's that's not really what this is because it's also ultimately about being able to hold your power inside of, all situations in your life. And like, let's talk about that a little bit too, and like how that kind of evolved for you, like, or just situations where you felt like it was hard to hold your power that now it's just like no big deal.
Well, I mean, just like getting in front of people. That's where it first started. And I mean, like a lot of like the training that I had, I've said this before, I didn't really resonate with. Like it just felt like it was too much in the thinking, right? Not as
Yeah.
in like what I feel. And I have noticed that people they want to be guided. Like when you truly form a relationship and you really come from like here, from your heart, like connecting from that place, not from your mind, which can be confusing and um, then you know when to insert an idea that they might be ready to hear. And
Yeah.
so and people feel like comforted when they have some guidance around that because again there's like all these different like programs that have been shoved down our throats that makes even like the thought of doing something that doesn't feel safe because society has told us it's not going to be safe um, all of a sudden become like lighter and free for people and helping like shift their perspective around that. So that really paying attention to like what comes up for me when I'm in front of people and not being afraid to share that.
Mm-hmm.
Having like the confidence that I'm like at an age where I have enough life perspective too, where I'm healed a lot of stuff where now I'm moving into confidently being able, confidently believing that people can learn something when I work with them. And I have had the experience. So it's, isn't that what like a lot of people who work in this space, like that's kind of the process. You look to people who have been through it
Yeah.
and you want to learn from them and you want like their support. So that is like the first place. And now I'm going to get ready to like be in front of groups of people, which I don't think is going to be like an issue. Like I know how to speak in front of people, but it's really like I go to different things that other people hold and I've always like didn't think that could be me. But I mean, it's all kind of like very like I'm no different. Like I have something to offer too. And then I have all these people that I can connect with and collaborate with rather than comparing myself. Like as soon as that kind of comes up, it just like I don't even really entertain it for that long and it doesn't like get in the way anymore.
Yeah, I love that because I think that's something that stops so many people too. Like people always say, well, I thought of like doing this business idea, but like too many other people are doing it. And like I think that's such a well, what do you say to that?
Well, I guess I mean, I was told this by another coach. It's like there's only like at least at the time the statistic was maybe like only around like 250,000 coaches or whatever in the space. Like I don't know if that's the exact statistic, but it was something along those lines. So when you think about like how many people exist in the world, and then I've just seen examples of people that I've met along the way where they had this like spiritual awakening because of a problem, something they needed to heal, whether it was physical, emotional, whatever it was. And through their own healing process, they went out and they shared that with the world. So I have been able to reframe that if money, I remember when I was a teacher and we had this design school and we would talk about kind of like this idea of the $1 million question. Like if there were no obstacles, if money wasn't the issue, because that can be a lot of things for people, and that block can come up for myself included, then what would you be doing? What would you make happen? So that's how I start to look at it. It's like I would be doing this anyway because this is what feels exciting to me. And so I'm just going to keep moving toward that excitement because I know when as soon as like fear enters, then that's like a lie. And I've seen how many people who have expanded and grown just from coming from that place, like the idea that I would be doing this anyway. And so I try to help like reframe that for people as like, you have all these fears around making this a success, but like, look at all of these like opportunities that are starting to show up for you and these connections that you can make. Like it's going to be a success. Like I can already kind of see that happening for you. So I think that's what I would say to people. It's like there are so many people, and I've met a lot of them that are lost. They don't know how to get the help that they're looking for. And so that is where you come in.
Yeah, totally. I agree. And also I think the other thing too is like no one does it like you do, or no one does it like I do. And I think there's going to be people that are attracted to you because of that, because you're not doing it like them and you have a different take, a different perspective, and different life experience that's going to, just set you apart from anybody else and just like a different way of doing things. So I think there's that piece of it too. But yeah, I think that it's also like you wouldn't think that you were supposed to do something if you weren't supposed to do it. And I feel the same exact way. Like I would be doing, I mean, pretty much all the things that I do, not like some of the annoying things that I don't like to do for the business, but I do in service to the business, but more like like working with clients. That is something I'd want to be doing anyway. Like that's actually where I feel the most alive and like the most happy
Yeah.
is when I'm like having conversations like this or working with clients. It's just, yeah, like I would be doing that anyway. So it's like, of course, why not get paid for it?
I know. I get very energized by that.
Yeah. So like, that's what you're meant to be doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what would you say also just kind of like any like because I know you kind of touched on unexpected results or like things that you might not have thought would change but change just in other areas of your life or any other like, stuff that we haven't touched on as far as shifts that you've made?
I think I'm starting to make more authentic, genuine friendships, because I am more authentic and confident in who I am. And I've had to let go of other friendships because it was nothing personal. It just was like a bit of like an energy suck for me that was interfering with what I needed to do. And now all these like really like authentic connections are starting to come in. And I'm approaching things so much more from like the heart and really like paying attention and trusting and not going like crazy or being irresponsible, but like what are things that I want to make happen in my life, and I'm really like deciding on that, like the and
Mhm.
it's like what is the next thing, right, and the next thing after that, and I'm trusting that that's going to show up and that all the resources to make that happen are going to appear. And that's how I'm moving forward more and more. And that feels really good. Like I don't experience a lot of stress around the way I'm like operating in my life lately.
I love that. And the friendship thing I think is so important. Like I feel like so many people I work with talk about that, either just like wanting more genuine friendships or not feeling like they're like able to fully be authentic in their friendships or like something like that. And I feel like one of the big themes actually in the metamorphosis this past round was like just noticing ways that you felt like you couldn't be authentic in certain friendships or relationships, or just noticing when you hold back or are afraid to share certain things. And I think that all of that kind of stuff is like based in wounding, right? And when you
Yeah,
shift that, you get to just be authentic in relationships. And that's why some relationships will, fall away, but then there'll be others that come in that are really special. And I've just noticed that as a theme for almost everybody that I've worked
really.
with. Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I feel like there's always something around friendships. It's either like wanting to call in more genuine friendships or um noticing like how you want to be more authentic or something like that. I think that's a really big thing, and it's also just like relational stuff, which
Yeah,
this obviously impacts.
yeah, I don't have fear anymore of saying what I want to say, that like I believe I like deserve in a relationship or how I want to connect. And if the relationship doesn't continue, I'm no longer like rejecting myself over it. It's just like that was not a connection, and that doesn't mean that that I always kind of see it as creating, sorry,
Oh, that's okay.
space for, yeah, when I maintain that authenticity, it will create the space for the people that are going to like match with that same authenticity, and it makes me feel more like secure. Like
Mhm.
I don't see it anymore as like a rejection of who I am, or I'm like some weirdo or something like that. There's other people like me that out there for me. Like we can have these ideas again that like especially as we get older, like, oh, I'm too this or I'm too that or I'm not enough of this or I'm not enough of that. And that's, gone for most of my thinking these days.
That's amazing. That's
Yeah.
so good. Um, Well, can you share too, like if people want to have a session with you or get in touch with you, where can they find you? And
Yeah.
we'll of course link that, but if you can just share that too.
Yeah, right now the best place is through my Instagram page. That's at Soul Compass 2024. If you just send me a DM, there's like 3 different links. I have an email list. I have a anxiety healing protocol that's free. It comes with a video. I've mentioned that before, and that's a really good way to get my email list. And then you can continue to kind of receive updates especially as I start to move towards offering more like in-person stuff if you're local, or online stuff. I'm going to be like putting more and more things out there. I will have a website coming soon. And so, but that right now is really like the best way to reach me. And also I do still do body work. It's all very connected to kind of like the trauma healing stuff that I am, passionate about. It's really like a very helpful way to just really start to learn how to regulate your nervous system, to kind of put you in a place where you feel more safe to kind of working through the emotions. So I can I can help people start anywhere with where they want to begin, and where it doesn't feel as scary, or if you're not really like ready to really dig in. I have discovery calls if you want to kind of find out ways that I can help you. And I like to work holistically. So I have a lot of tools in my tool belt. I like to work also on helping people like with the physical side of what's going on for them, that it's all related to kind of where you feel mentally and emotionally. So I have a lot of ways I can support people and just meet people where they're at.
Amazing. Thank you. Yeah, the body work piece is so important, like with the trauma for sure. I think that's like very a big part of this. So I love that you do that. So, well, I just want to say like congratulations. I just loved it was so much fun working with you in this container and like just like making everything happen. I just feel like it was one of those things where, it just like the magic just happened. But it is such a I just want to say too, it's such a testament to like when you set a really clear intention too, and it's something that's like really aligned and that you're ready for, it happens. So
Yeah, it does. And I am just like really excited for where things are going to go. Like, so I'm hoping, to meet more people that can be excited along with me.
yeah, well, I'm excited along with you. Thank you so much for sharing everything that you did and for being here. And we will link everything below. But thank you so much.
Thank you, Elise.